The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, joins me now. Lovely to see you this morning. Thank you so much for coming in. Have you spoken to the Chancellor since Wednesday? How is she?
Yes, we've been in touch. She's great. I mean, Rachel's made a tough stuff and she's just focused on getting on and doing her job.
So we've heard from multiple sources that she may have had a row, as well as with the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, with Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister. Her team is denying that. But what is going on inside the Labour Party that a senior female figure is in tears in the Commons?
Look, I wouldn't really know anything about that other than what Rachel has said is that she was dealing with a personal matter that morning. I think we can all understand that, you know, as politicians, we do have, you know, personal challenges we sometimes have to grapple with. And you know, Rachel was back out there the next day launching the NHS 10-year plan with Wes Streeting and the Prime Minister. So, you know, she's a tough cookie and she's doing fine.
OK. You have big spending plans in your own department. We've got this announcement of the kind of rebooting of Sure Start. That's going to cost £500 million. I believe that's already being taken from the education budget as it stands. But we've now had this U-turn on welfare following the U-turn on winter fuel. That now means that the Chancellor isn't going to have several billion that she thought she'd have for spending plans, including on schools. So does that mean that tax rises are inevitable now come autumn?
I think we all knew that the public finances were in a tight position. That was what we inherited from the Conservatives. But at the spending review, we made different choices about what we were going to invest in. And that's why today I'm able to announce revitalised local family support services with new Best Start family hubs that will provide an enormous boost to families. And where it comes to future decisions in the budget, you know, those are matters for the Chancellor. It is important that the numbers add up, that we adhere to our fiscal rules, and we've got a clear plan for making sure the country continues to see economic growth.
But it sounds like you're not ruling out tax rises.
Well, these are not decisions for me as Education Secretary. They're matters for the Chancellor. This will all be taken together in the budget. But what is critical, and what we've always been clear about, is that getting economic growth is absolutely essential, because if we grow our economy, we're in a much stronger position where it comes to our ability to invest.
When it comes to the number of teachers in schools, now we remember the pledge at the very beginning of Labour's term in office, where you said that we were having to accept the VAT increase, the VAT being applied to private school fees to fund 6,500 teachers. Schools Week has reported that actually these aren't new teachers. Some of them are already in post, and that primary teachers have been left out of these numbers. So can you tell me now, how many actual new teachers are being recruited as a result of the VAT hike?
So we are seeing big progress. We've got almost 2,300 more teachers in secondary, in FE and in the specialist sector. We're focusing our efforts there because that's where we see the biggest growth. Where it comes to primary, we know that because of the falling birth rate, we will sadly in the years to come just need fewer primary school teachers. That's the sad reality of where we are at the moment. But we are increasing the number of teachers. We're also seeing more teachers staying in the profession. So we're seeing really positive green shoots as we move towards our target of 6,500 teachers, as you say.
When will that 6,500 be met? Because it was in the manifesto and some of the language changed around it being new. So when are we getting the 6,500 teachers?
So that's over the course of the Parliament.
Right. But then Schools Week has also reported that if you take all teachers on board, and I note that you didn't mention primary school teachers when you listed the number of new teachers that we have, actually we've got 400 fewer teachers across the board now than we had last June. So actually the number of teacher numbers have gone down under Labour, despite a promise for them to go up by 6,500.
They're going up where we need them, which is in secondary, specialist and FE. Sadly, we do and will in the years to come need fewer primary school teachers because we've got fewer primary school children.
OK, this is the other confusing element to this. At the beginning, Labour said that you were putting VAT on private school fees to fund teachers. We then had a series of tweets from Keir Starmer suggesting that that money is actually funding affordable housing. What is the money that the VAT hike has produced going on? Is it going on teachers or is it going on loads of other Labour policies?
So the amount of money that will be raised by the end of the Parliament is around £1.8 billion in terms of private schools, the VAT on private schools. Through the spending review and actually through the budget, we're already investing more beyond that. When you raise tax, of course, that money then goes into the Treasury and decisions are taken about how the money is spent. But through the spending review, we're investing now more in schools, in colleges, also in rebuilding more schools, and alongside that, expanding free school meals eligibility to more children, the biggest expansion in a generation, which actually far outstrips anything we're going to raise through private school fees. But I do think it was the right decision to raise money to reinvest in state education, and that is precisely what we're doing, alongside investing more, for example, in social and affordable housing. These are all decisions that have been taken through the spending review and demonstrate our determination to build a better and fairer country.
OK, but then you say better and fairer. The VAT on private school fees has adversely affected private school pupils, hasn't it? We've now got school closures up 67%. 18 private schools closed in 2024. Today, as of today, it's 31. And that's apparently affected twice as many SEN special needs children. So was it worth it to see schools closed down as Education Secretary?
So the number of private schools now is higher than it was last year. So we've actually got more private schools than last year. That's the figures that we have. What I would say, I mean, we discussed...
How can we have more than last year if 31 have closed? How many have opened?
There's more opening.
How many have opened in comparison to 31 closing?
I'd need to look at the exact number, but I know that from the numbers I've reviewed, the numbers of private schools are higher now than they were last year.
But in general, are you happy with schools closing?
Private schools open and close all the time. That's what's happened over decades. That's not a new phenomenon. What I'm determined to do is to make sure that we do invest more in state education. Now, I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have on this or any other topic, and I'll answer them as directly as I can. But I do have to say, we've gone around this quite a few times in the past when I've been on your show. Good to be with you again today. But actually, the vast majority of the people watching this will be sending their kids to state schools.
Yes.
And what they want to know is how we're improving standards in our state schools and delivering more teachers as we are into our state schools.
For clarification, I've got a foot in both camps because I send a child to state school and I send two children to private school. So I can see it from both sides of the coin. And the problem with people who have got their children in state schools, particularly in oversubscribed areas like mine, I live in Hertfordshire, is that they are affected because if private school children can't afford to go to their schools, they then apply to go to state schools. The state schools are then oversubscribed. So it does have an impact. There has been an exodus of private school children, so it is relevant to the state sector. But just in general, as an education secretary, how can you be happy with a situation where 31 schools have been closed down and presumably teachers have lost their jobs? You can't be happy with that scenario.
And private schools are private businesses. They make decisions about their funding model, about who they appeal to. But actually, as I say, we've got more private schools this year than we did last. What I'd also add, when you talk about movement of students between different parts of the sector, on the secondary school offer day this year, so when parents are offered their place at a secondary school, we actually saw an increase in the number of first choice offers. So the kind of the scaremongering, the talk that we apparently had about this would have a terrible and devastating effect, I'm afraid just isn't coming to pass.
All right. When we move on to you discussing the idea of the low birth rate, I think you said that earlier with regard to primary school teachers, and you're saying that you now want more people to have more children. Aren't you just channeling your inner Nigel Farage there? I mean, previously we've heard Labour politicians sort of try and push back on the Tories talking about family taxes or incentives to have a family, a kind of 2.4 children scenario. You've often said, oh, no, that stigmatises single parents. Now you're advocating families and fathers.
No, I've always been really open in talking about, including from opposition, and talking about how Labour is the party of the family. But I believe that families come in different shapes and sizes. I was brought up in a single-parent family. That was a loving and supportive home, and that's as much of a family as a married couple as I am with children now. But I do think there is a good and strong Labour and left-wing argument for how people are making choices at the moment about family shape and about how many children they can have that are often rooted in decisions beyond their control. So some of those pressures that families are facing about the cost of living or housing. But I would also say just how lots of people, particularly young people, tell me they worry about becoming a parent because they think it's just too hard, that the support isn't available. So what I'm announcing today around more family support services through Best Start Family Hubs is about making sure that all parents, regardless of income or background, get the support they need around becoming a parent. It is a huge life-changing, wonderful life-changing event. But often in those early months and years, parents can find it hard, isolating, and having access to, to other parents, to family support services, to health services. That is all critical in how we just make parenting easier in this country. And that's what I'm talking about today.
Do you worry about fatherlessness? It was identified as a factor in particularly white working class boys falling behind in class by a report by the Centre for Social Justice called Lost Boys recently.
I want to make sure that all boys and young men have got really strong, good role models in their lives. Now, often that can come in the shape of a father, but sometimes it can be granddads, uncles, or actually role models within school as well. And that's why I really want to see more men working in primary schools and early years education, so that our boys do have really fantastic role models to look up to and to aspire to be. And part of what I'm going to be setting out tomorrow through our Best Start in Life strategy is how we really improve early years education. And I think making sure we've got more men working in early years and in primary schools is an important part of that, and supporting families of all shapes and sizes to thrive.
Final quick question. How worried are you about Jeremy Corbyn's new party with Zara Sultana?
They can do as they choose. We're just focused on actually getting on and making life better for people in this country.
Don't think they're going to steal votes from Labour?
Well, it's not got off to the best of start so far for them, but that's for them. They can do as they choose. We're focused on the future, on delivering for working people across our country.
Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much for joining me in the studio this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you know what? I'll say this of the Education Secretary. She's always willing to come in and make the argument. She insists she comes into the studio, unlike others in Labour. She actually engages with GB News, unlike the Prime Minister when it comes to my show, at least. I know he speaks to Chopper, Angela Rayner, the Deputy, and indeed the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. So maybe they should take a leaf out of Bridget Phillipson's book. Nothing to be afraid of, just some straight questions that require straight answers.